The national poverty rate currently in Nigeria stands at 40%, representing 82.9 million persons. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics.
Yes, indeed. This is according to the 2019 Poverty and Inequality in Nigeria report published by the statistical agency, which is the NBS, as you've mentioned before. Borno State was excluded from the poverty estimate. Urban poverty rate stood at about 18%, while the rural poverty rate is estimated at 52%. Now, the report on poverty and inequality is from September 2018 to...
Well, that 40% live below poverty line of 137,430 naira per year. In other words, an average of 4 out of 10 individuals in Nigeria has a real per capita data expenditure below the amount. The highest poverty levels were in Sokoto, where 87.7% of people lived under the poverty line, compared with 4.5% in Lagos State, which has the lowest rate.
According to the NBS, 52% of people in rural areas live in poverty, compared with 18% in urban parts of the country. For safety reasons, the stat did not include Borno, which has been the worst hit by 10 years of Boko Haram insurgency. So joining us now is Chidi, Okoro, a social commentator and former MD of GSK Consumer. Is quite apt in national issues like this. Chidi, it's a pleasure having you via our WebEx platform. And if you can hear me real quickly, Chidi, paint a picture of how this will affect businesses. 82.9 million Nigerians cannot, afford to spend 137,000 naira every year. This would definitely affect spending power. People will not be able to buy things. Purchasing power will drop. The parity is dropped already in Nigeria. There are many ancillary factors. There's going to be social unrest and the like. Just paint a very, very vivid picture of all of this, Chidi, for us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rufai. I think the number is certainly 83 million people, add plus or minus 2 million thereabout if you factored in Borno. But when you look at businesses, when we plan business opportunity, when we look at opportunities in markets, we always look at total population and we claim 206, 207 million. So what you're seeing is that out of that, 40% is actually ineffective. So effective population is 120. You need to factor out a large number again and see consumption power in terms of number is actually not what it seems to be. That's very clear. And there are a couple of other implications. Number one, it has implication also to the workforce that business could get. Because when you look at the issues MBS point out, what you have, poverty represents issues like lack of access to nutrition, to education, to healthcare, to housing, sanitation. You cannot have this kind of being productive in the workplace. The other one is social unrest. Absolutely, you're spot on there. So you can easily have people tip over when things happen. You saw what's happening with COVID-19, and suddenly people are jumping onto the street. Disregarding all the advice. For business, this data is very important. You have to use that to plan and understand what's really the effective population Nigeria has. So implication to business is dire. That's a very light number. And it comes in different formats in terms of implications to business.
Indeed. Two questions for you. And when you look at our statistics, Sokoto accounting for the highest poverty rate at 87.7%, and Lagos accounting for the lowest at 4.50%. What struck you the most in the statistics? Any surprises? And secondly, you did mention that this is good for businesses to plan, but it's also good for government to have this crucial data in planning for a government who wants to lift 10 million people out of poverty for the next 10 years. But just how can we make the best of the situation? Dwindling economy, dwindling revenue sources, and of course the disruption by COVID-19. How do we make best of the situation? Where's the fixes coming from?
I think the opportunity lies in looking at the details behind the data. If you look at places like Sokoto, that's a surprise, to have Sokoto. They've been at some kind of peace. Yeah, they have issues with their bandits, etc. But I think I want to refer you to when people talk about basic things like literacy rate, school enrollment. I think Sokoto does have a very low number. If you look at the number of people that get into secondary school, it does have a low number. I think the opportunity for government is to understand that these issues are there and we have to tackle that. And different things we can do. They are not very complicated, as we may say. The first one is we can enhance access to a basic education. If we did that, this is vital. Think about targeted education in the North, just focusing on technical education format. Think about that. You could easily see 20 million technicians, and we can supply Africa with technicians and the world at last. I will target, if I were government, I would target 100% enrollment in education, and that is possible. People will say it's easier said than done, but during the election, we'll get these guys to vote.
Okay.
The other one
all right,
is...
Mr. Chidi Okoro, I hate to interrupt you, but let's go on a quick break and we'll come back to talk some more. Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News, and we're talking to a social commentator as well as the former managing director of GSK, Chidi Okoro. Thank you so much for staying with us. And just to quickly recap for our viewers who may have just joined us during the break, I was asking you before that break, and which you have responded partly to, the surprises for you in the latest poverty statistics by the NBS. And you said Sokoto was a surprise for you. But I also asked you about how we can fix this with the current economic realities we are facing. And you're also talking about technical education. You want to take up from there?
Yeah. That's right. I think when you look at, you have issues with access to education. That's one of the things that this throws up, access to basic health care. Can we fix that in the North or part of those states where we have those issues? You know, think about 20, 30 million technicians. You can focus on technical education and target 100% enrollment, and that's possible. During elections, we get 100% or 80, 90% voting in some of these areas. Primary health care is another one. You can rebuild and sustain, and we can focus on preventive healthcare. That's the other thing that I miss out. The other opportunity for us is rural urbanization. You know, I don't know whether you understand what I'm saying. Rural urbanization, basic amenities and targeted incentives to nudge investments via, targeted incentives. That if you did that, you can have some of these areas start to see some kind of improvement in terms of economics. Also, government can look at facilitating enterprise. I think the thing is we can focus on ongoing establishments and encourage skill. I'm not an advocate of helping people set up, new business. It would rather focus on businesses that are running already. Think about Nigeria has 40 million MSMEs, medium, small enterprises. Think about getting 1 million of them to employ 10 people extra. That's 10 million jobs created, and you lift this people out of poverty. Microloans is another one. Then the apprenticeship model. This can be studied, adapted, and extended. This worked a lot in some states. I think the states and FG will work together over this, but we'll need to reform a couple of things to see a political leadership that can make this happen. Certainly, the political leadership needs to be reformed. So the actions that we need to take are not very complicated, and it can be done. It needs focus. But remember, moving people out of poverty takes some time. It's not a quick fix.
Definitely. Well, Nigeria was already struggling to shake off the effect of the 2016 recession, and now this. But let's not forget that even this NBS numbers we are seeing is actually as a result of the measurement between 2018 and 2019. So that's to say that the COVID-19 impact hasn't been felt, as well as, the reduction of the price of crude oil. So my question to you is, how can we re-strategize Nigeria's economic model to make it sufficient enough to fight poverty? Where does the economic recovery and growth plan fit in all of this?
Yeah, I think you mentioned all, and I think we can start with that. We'll come to the economic recovery plan. I think all was always a volatile resource, but it's all 60% of government revenue and 90% of forex. We were always in trouble, by the way. It's to what extent we were in trouble. The situation is here for a long, long while. At the moment, it's very complicated with Saudi, Russia, US locked in some kind of game. And the moment we have a swing producer, the US is about the highest consumer and now the highest producer. And Russia and Saudi are fighting for market share. So Nigeria, we have always been diversifying this economy. So if you look at all our plans the last 15 years, we talk about diversification. And make no mistake, our economy is actually pretty well diversified, because all accounts for about just 10% of, GDP contribution. And think about this, what is not diversified is sources of government revenue and forex. Those we haven't achieved that. We need very clear strategy. And I'm not one of those who say we should walk away from oil. We should build from oil. That's the first thing. The first thing is we need to face reality. We are not a major oil company, oil producing nation. We make 2 million barrels a day, and that's nothing for 200 million people. We need to revisit that medium-term economic framework. The assumptions are out of the window. We need to throw those out. And the challenge with today's situation is that the issues you're facing today will certainly linger. The oil dynamics is changed very rapidly. I think budgets have to face reality. We have 10-point-something trillion. We cannot afford that. I think we should be looking at 5 trillion budget. And all the states should cut theirs down, get the basics right. Our capex should be strategic and quit the white elephant. I love the rails. I see we talk about rails all the time. That's great. But with per capita income $2,000, I'm not sure we can afford fast rails. We can do basic rails to carry goods or commodities across Nigeria. So get the basic networks, revamp education. But I think our focus should be on getting education right. The only way to tell the future prosperity of a people is to look at access and quality of the education. So we need to look at that. The other thing we need to do, there are a couple of low-hanging fruits. Get focused on redundant gas reserves. It's not over for gas. We can invest and push markets around here. We can own the markets around here and some forex from gas. We do have a huge gas reserve. I mean, Russia is playing that game there. Saudi is also doing that. So we can use gas to spring up local manufacturing. We can also become major gas supplier across West Africa and Central. We can do that. The PIB needs to be passed, and then we need to sell off the redundant refineries. We need to fix the basics. We have gas reserves that we can actually pull up right now, and we can use gas to spring up industrialization, and we can become major supplier across West and Central Africa. PIB got to be passed, sell off the refineries, and I think we do have opportunity to go into refining and petrochemicals. Dangote refining is coming up here. Petrochemicals will be a major opportunity unlocker for sectors like pharmaceuticals. The other things are tax reform is there for us. And agriculture is one, not gardening. I mentioned that, but we all talk about agriculture. We've got to really play across the value chain. Retail, traditional, modern, and then turn redundant capital.
Okay, Chidi, as we quickly wrap up, I want you to talk through this very important question everybody keeps asking. Our population, is it a blessing or a curse? Can you just talk through how we can use our population effectively? All right, Chidi's gone, and I'd like to...
Important question.
Okay, Chidi's back. So, Chidi, real quickly, our population, what can we do to make our population a blessing? 200 million people in less than 30 seconds, Chidi.
We may have lost Chidi Okoro there, but It was an interesting conversation to have.